The end of the year. As 2023 approaches its end, this is the time when people reflect on the year, come up with resolutions, and all that jazz. Personally, I am not huge on the resolutions thing. However, I do want to reflect today on 2023 and how it was for me, at least how it has been so far, as it approaches its end in about a week or so, and what I am looking forward to during 2024. Well, we'll keep it short and simple, and I'll give you a few of the things that worked for me, the things that didn't work for me, and I'll pretty much go unscripted for the most part. I do have a few notes, but yeah, that's the plan for today. I hope you are ready to hear this quote unquote unscripted reflection on 2023. Hi, I am Raysa, a survivor of narcissistic abuse, and I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and you are listening to Hello Trauma Brain, a podcast where I share my experiences living with complex PTSD. My hope is this podcast can help destigmatize mental health and provide support to anyone diagnosed with CPTSD who thinks they might have it or has a loved one with this diagnosis. Quick reminder, I am not a licensed psychologist or mental health care professional, and this podcast is not meant to replace nor substitute the care of psychologists, other mental or medical health care professionals. If you think you might have complex PTSD or PTSD, please reach out to your primary care or mental health care provider. Any individuals and resources mentioned in this episode are not sponsoring Hello Trauma Brain. This episode may reference trauma or abuse, and listener discretion is advised. Remember, you can always pause or skip this episode at any time. And now, let's get back to the episode. Hello, dear survivors, and welcome to this episode of Hello Trauma Brain, which is the final one of 2023. I cannot believe I'm saying that. Thank you for joining me today. If you are listening on YouTube, a gentle reminder to hit the like button to let me know this episode was helpful. Quick check-in. So I happen to be recording this episode on Christmas night. It's almost the end of Christmas for me, and I thought about not doing it today for the purposes of like taking the actual day off. And the more I thought about the stress I would get if I didn't record it tonight and at least got started, basically I ended up concluding that it's pretty much the end of the day anyway, and it's gonna I'm gonna be very grateful for recording this tonight. So here we are. I do want to say, in terms of Christmas, it's been a mixed bag. I started very gently. I had a moment of joy connecting with chosen family, and then it's been grief filled for the afternoon and into the evening. And I found new traditions, so I'm very happy that I found new traditions that I want to continue next year. And I still get surprised by the amount of grief I have in my heart when it comes out. And I welcome it all. It's been a day of a lot of acceptance, or a day with a lot of struggling accepting things, if I am honest. But here we are towards the end of the day, and I'm getting ready to reflect a little bit on this past year. I honestly, I feel like every year goes quicker for me. Is that how it is for everybody? I feel like that's usually what I hear people say too. If you're not experiencing it that way, I'd be so curious to hear how you are experiencing it, or if it's the same, honestly. But we're here, and before I do get started, before I forget, I do want to announce that I do want to take a brief hiatus, and it won't be long. Probably I'm thinking about 2 to 3 weeks off to recharge and fill my cup. And then towards the end of January, resume the second half of season 1 for Hello Trauma Brain. If you are following Hello Trauma Brain on Instagram, I will announce there when I have the official date when the next episode will be releasing. So you are welcome to keep an eye on the Instagram account for that. And if you are not on social media at all, which I completely understand, I welcome you to either keep an eye on the platform you are using to listen, or you can email me too. The email for the podcast is hellotraumabrain@gmail.com. And you're welcome to email me there, and I will gladly shoot you an email back when I have the date so you know when to check out for the podcast. So, 2023. Wow, what a year. I feel like so much happened, and at the same time, I feel like I have so much healing to go still. So I did take a few notes, but I will, for the most part, give you a raw reflection on this past year. I guess I'll try to start chronologically. So beginning of 2023. Back then, I had just done my first therapy session with a trauma-informed, and I should say trauma-trained therapist. We did our first session towards the end of 2022. Wow, that's nuts to say that. Okay. And then it's pretty much been, I've been seeing her for an entire year now. It's gonna be a year in just, I think, 2 days. I want to say it's when our official anniversary is, and which happens to be our next session too. talk about talk about going and like finishing the cycle, right? And it's been a really good experience. I've come from having other therapists in the past, and they were fine. They were not, I wouldn't say that they didn't help me at all. There were things that I did get from those experiences. However, it is night and day. If I am honest, it really is night and day what I had before versus what I have now. And one of the things that I do want to do in the new year for the podcast is I do want to do an episode where I dive deeper into my experience with my trauma trained therapist and how I went about finding her too, because I did have a process, and I will share that on the podcast. But for purposes of reflecting today, one of the big takeaways from my time with her so far is the validation, the psychoeducation. She's very attuned to me. It's yeah, she's she's very good at her job. And she actually was very supportive of this podcast. I remember when I was thinking about the podcast, and she really encouraged me to do this. And recently she said to me, what she loves about the podcast is that it is an exercise on getting my autonomy and control back. I want to say there was a third thing, but I'm blanking out right now. But those two are sticking out. And I think it's also my voice. That might be the third one. But anyhow, I think she's right. I think this podcast has been a huge exercise for me. And yeah, I started off the year already with her, like brand new as my new therapist, and now as the year approaches an end, I'm really glad that I have her on my team of support. And let's see what happened in 2023 towards the beginning. I turned a year older. Oh yeah, I discovered I have been discovering just parts of me that I didn't even know were there, and I I won't go into those right now because I want to make them their own episode for the podcast in the new year. But I've learned so much about me in this past year. Just things I didn't even know were there that now looking back, I mean, they, of course they make sense, but it's incredible how I couldn't go there until I really distanced myself from some of the main toxic and abusive people in my life. Ah, 2023. What else happened? I have worked and removed some serious toxic people out of my life during this year. It's incredible. Like, even when I thought that I had removed the main people, sometimes it's a little baffling to like take in that I still had some really toxic people in my life this year. And at this point, like, it's yeah, they're not really there. I've worked some major players that were still hanging around out, and it has not been a pretty process, I'll say that. But there's so breath of fresh air too. Like, while the ending of those relationships was happening, it was pretty tough. But as I look back now from where I'm standing, and I reflect on not having to interact with them on a regular basis, whew, it feels good. It feels great. And speaking of relationships, I have also cultivated some really wonderful relationships in my life that have really grown this year and become a crucial aspect of my life. And I don't know how I did it before these people were in my life. I don't know. I really don't know. The only thing I am so glad for is that I have them in my life now. And oh, I'm so glad about that. What a gift to my healing and to my mental health, and just to me as a human being, to have healthy friends that are reliable, that are supportive, that are non-judgmental, that will show up and show up voluntarily. Like, it's just, yeah, it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful gift. I got to meet survivors that I had only known virtually, and I finally got to meet them in person, and I hope to meet more in 2024. One of them I met at a music festival, which was the first time I went camping too. That was, was a whole experience, and that was a great festival. Oh my gosh, so many artists. But I will say, like, if I had to pick the top from everyone that I saw, and let me tell you, I mean, I'm picking the top, but there were some solid artists in that festival. So it's really hard to like not say that they were all so good, that they're all on the top. But if I had to pick one, the Lumineers were so good. Oh my gosh, that was such a great concert. Wow, I did that. I went there. Woo! I totally did that. And it was just a wonderful company. I got to spend time with such a wonderful friend, and it's just, yeah, the concept of chosen family is just, it's a wonderful gift to meet someone in person. And part of you is like nervous when that's happening. It's like, oh my gosh, is this gonna like work out? And it does, and it's like, yes. And I did it again. A chosen family that I saw for Halloween. And what a gift to be in a safe house, staying with safe people, and just feeling so welcome. And just, yeah. Wonderful people that I, again, I don't know how I did this without these people before. And there are other people they're just as beloved to me, and I can't wait to meet them in person when the chance and the opportunity comes. And I know in 2024, if all goes to plan, I will get to meet more, and I'm so excited about that. Okay, what else happened? I I started this podcast. This podcast is a 2023 baby. This podcast, gosh, the process of getting here. I remember doing the research on podcasting, doing a test episode, sending it to people. Let me tell you, if it wasn't for those people, this thing wouldn't even exist. Like, I wouldn't be here, honestly. I don't think I would have been able to get the courage to do this on my own. So all those people, and if you're listening, thank you. Thank you for the encouragement. Thank you for the ideas. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you for showing up for me, because really, just without you, yeah, I don't think I would have ever actually taken the step to begin this endeavor. Oh my gosh. I'm just thinking about it. It's absolutely insane. I have a podcast. It's just like, oh my God. I'm doing a podcast on Christmas Day. What the heck? What? That's right. That's right. That's happening right now. Whew. What else happened? Gosh, I got purple highlights. I've gotten highlights before, but this year I went purple with the highlights. And gosh, that's like a whole episode of its own. But that was scary and exciting. And I remember when I did it, and it was like joyful. And I remember having the moment of like, oh my gosh, what have I done? And I'm so glad I did. I still have them. I plan on having them as I go into 2024, and maybe I'll experiment with other colors. We'll see. We'll see. But gosh, what a beautiful part of myself to get to allow me to do this unconventional color in my hair. And let me tell you the compliments. I still get compliments on the curls, on the purple curls, and it's like, yeah, that's right. It's funny. Sometimes I forget, but people will say like, "Oh wow, are those purple?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's right. I do have purple curls. Yes, yes, they are." What else happened in 2023? Let's see. I did interviews. Wasn't even planning on doing an interview for the podcast for a while. I thought I would probably like need to do the podcast for a good year plus before I even consider doing the interviews. And I did one. And spoiler alert, I won't say who they are because I don't want to put anyone in a position where they cannot back out. Like, you know, if anyone who's agreed to interview in the next year, if you're listening and something happens and you can't do it, I don't want you to feel like now you've been announced in the podcast and you can't change your mind. This is a very trauma-informed podcast, so you can always change your mind at any time. And I will understand. I won't hold it against you. And but yeah, there's more interviews coming, and I'm excited to share with y'all the not only the guests, but what they're bringing, like what they're bringing into the table. I have some really exciting people that I can't wait for you to meet and hear from. And gosh, that's happening. That's happening this year. Gosh, what else going on? You know what? Yes, I do want to share. I do. Since we're talking about the podcast, I do want to share some of the wins of the podcast. The podcast is still a baby. We're not even 20 episodes in. This is episode 19. I don't number the episodes on the titles. That was something I saw online about not doing it, so I haven't done it. And for those of you that are wondering what episode is this, it's 19. This is 19. So episode 20 will come out next year. Can't believe it. And so far, from the stats that I can see, according to Spotify Wrapped, Imposter, Pilot, and Hypothesis, that's episode 1, was the top episode of 2023. According to Apple Podcasts, What is Complex PTSD was the top episode of 2023. And according to YouTube, the YouTube channel Gaslight, the movie illustration, that was the top episode of this year so far. And in terms of the charts in the US, the podcast is like really, really far out, which completely understand is such a baby podcast, and there's a lot of podcasts out there. However, and this is still blowing my mind. I don't know how this works, but according to Chartable and their Apple podcast in Armenia, Hello Trauma Brain has been charting there and has been in the top 100 for their health and fitness category. It's been going on for a few weeks now. And it's also been in the mental health category. Now that one, the peaked number, this was a few weeks ago, was number 12. So I was like, number 12. Like, what? Number 12 in Armenia. But at this point, I'm still in the top 100 there. But I think I'm like 60 something right now. Which again, it's like, what? So if anybody from Armenia is listening, I love to hear how did you find the podcast? And please reach out because I can't. It doesn't, like, when I go to Apple Podcasts, it doesn't list Armenia. So I don't understand how that's possible. I don't know if that's a glitch or what's going on. But if you are listening and you are in Armenia, or you're listening to in a way that it would register in Armenia, let me know how. Because a part of me is like still in this belief, like, is this real? How is this happening? Let's see. Podcast wins. I guess I have to say, when the podcast has been shared, when you've shared it, and I have to say, like, when experts have shared it, it's like my mind just gets blown. It's like, what? Dr. Ingrid Clayton just put the podcast in her reels. Like, what? Oh, wow. And again, it's one of those things where, like, I'm not expecting it, and when it happens, it's just like my brain is like trying to compute what's going on. And speaking of Dr. Ingrid Clayton, I'll go ahead and say this. And seriously, y'all, this has nothing to do with her sharing my podcast in her reels. She could have never even shared my podcast. I would still say this, hands down. I'm not a huge reader. Like, reading is just, I'm still working on that. That's a challenge for me. And I hope in 2024 I can improve. Like, I'm not even really far in my CPTSD book from Pete Walker yet, because it takes me a long time to get into a book and come back to it and, like, register the information. And I'm one of those readers where, like, my trauma looks a lot like ADHD sometimes, and I am that person that reads the same page a few times. And yeah, it's hard to read when you're reading the same page a good 10 times to, like, grasp half of it. But in 2023, there was one book that, quite frankly, broke the record, and it gave me the hope that I can read. And that book was actually Dr. Ingrid Clayton's memoir called Believing Me. I couldn't put that book down. I read it so fast, like in less than a month, which for me, that's like record breaking. This is the girl that takes a year to read a book. And within a month, I read it. I remember I read like a good, was it 50, either 50 or 100 pages in like one weekend, which again, this might be like average reading for someone else. For me, that's a huge deal. Like, I'm lucky if I can read 10 pages on a sitting. So that definitely was my top book for 2023, and I strongly recommend it. And yeah, you won't be hearing the end of that. In 2024, I will still be talking about Believing Me. And yeah, that would be my top book. Trying to think about my top movies. You know, y'all know me. I love my movies. That's a hard one to think about because I do watch a lot of films. So that one is a bit harder to tackle. And I'll tell you this, a recent movie, I just saw it this week. Maestro. Oh, Bradley Cooper. Brace yourself, man. I hope you're ready for the Oscars. The whole thing. Yeah, that's at least nominated if they don't like wipe out the house next year for the Oscars. That was a really good movie, and very unique too. I love the way they shot it. I love how it starts black and white and it just gets into color, and it's I mean, it was truly beautiful to look at. And as a musician myself, it's just like fascinating to like hear the music, and beautiful. And I've gone to back in college, the choir. I was in the college choir. We did Leonard Bernstein's Mass. And yeah, I just like hearing his music, and there's a part where he references like, I finished Mass, and I was like, I remember singing that. Yeah, that was beautifully done. But gosh, I'm trying to think. Is that my favorite movie of the year though? Right now, I feel like it is, but I feel like I might might give a closer thought later on and go like, oh wait, what about this? That is a way of entertainment that like really grabs me. And even though I do pause the movies quite a bit too, um, I do get way further down with them than I do with books. In terms of TV shows, I have seen some. I mean, I love my shows and I love a good quality show, and I do watch quite a bit of them. And if I have to pick my favorite of 2023, hands down, Heartstopper. I absolutely adore that fucking show. I think those kids are incredible. If you haven't seen the show, oh my, what a treat. It does bring some grief for me because to see kids that young get to experience some things that I didn't, like it's hard for me to watch it sometimes. But gosh, it's so beautiful. Like just to see these kids. I mean, they handle conflict beautifully. I mean, these kids are fucking brave. They're having some tough conversations. They approach each other. They're clear when they're communicating. They have that curiosity. It's beautiful. And what I love about it is that the characters that are celebrated are just wonderful, kind, empathetic people. And the bullies and the characters that are toxic, they get called out on that. And even though there maybe here and there might be some enabling with some stuff, for the majority of the show, the really toxic stuff, it doesn't get just excused away. And I like that. A show like that can be available for teenagers to watch and get a good role model of like, yeah, that's not okay to do that to people, and this is how you handle difficult situations. And I can't get enough of it. I've seen it a few times now, and I can't wait for season 3. Woohoo! I just saw that they finished filming, so they just wrapped up the shooting of the season 3, and I guess now they're gonna go into editing, and I can't wait. I cannot wait. Exciting. Now, favorite song of 2023. That's a tough pick because A, I'm a musician. B, I listen to music more than anything else. And I go through, I mean, there's so many fucking songs that I love and adore. However, if I'm gonna go by what Spotify Rap said is my most listened song of 2023, that was The Fall by Gregory Alan Isakov. At this point, you're probably thinking he's paying me to say this, but he's not. He's just a great artist. And however, I will say from that album, that's from his latest album, Appaloosa Bones, that came out in the fall of this year. Mistakes is my favorite song in that one. And it happens to be number 3, like the top 3 from this year. Like if I had to actually pick the one that I love the most from that album, that would be the one. And that happens to be the song that plays over the Instagram post where I share myself crying my eyes out during a shame attack. So yeah, that I would say is my favorite song of the year. Definitely that album would be like my top for the year too. Appaloosa Bones by Gregory Alan Isakov. I would say that I've taken some major risks. Approaching people about some conflict, that's a major thing for me that was new. Like I'm still working on that. I still have some trouble like approaching some people. At this point, the people that I still have the avoidant situation with, we're talking about people who are just not safe and very toxic, and it's hard to do conflict with someone that's gonna bite your hand off, metaphorically speaking. But I have exercised clearer communication. Is one of those things where I've done it, and it doesn't necessarily mean the other person is gonna reciprocate and also be clear and kind and curious sometimes. And actually, for some of those tough conversations, they blew the hell up, and we don't talk anymore. But it felt good for me to, even if it ended, to know that I did my part, and that was new. Because usually the way it would go is like everybody ghosts each other. Sometimes that happens still, but that's usually the default. Or it's like a huge fight and I also blow up and I usually don't feel great when that happens. I definitely felt a lot better going about it in this new way, and I hope to keep working on that in 2024. I guess something that I'm still struggling with that I need to work on this upcoming year is my magical thinking with time. I feel like that got worse somehow. I don't know how that happened. And I think this is something actually, I don't think it has a lot to do directly with the fact that I started healing, but more with like from the pandemic, like ever since the pandemic happened, coming to now, it's a struggle to calculate the actual time it will take me to make it somewhere. And this is only happening like when I have to be physically somewhere else. Like if it's a call or a video call and I'm doing it from my place. I mean, sometimes I'm like cutting it pretty close, but that usually I'm right on the dot, like on it. But when it comes to arriving somewhere, I'm struggling with that. And I'm trying to figure out how to address it. So that'll definitely be something to add to my list of things that I do want to work on for the next year. I still need to improve, like in terms of like things that I'm avoiding and neglecting, like that's still happening with a few tasks or things in my life. And yeah, I won't name those right now, but yeah, I could use some work there. It's a lack of organization. It's also a lack of motivation to do like things that I just don't want to do them. And I keep putting them off, and then it gets to a point where it's like, okay, like this is actually hurting me, so I need to crank down on those. I would say that I am proud of the fact that I have been more outdoorsy, and what I mean by that is I've been taking more walks in nature, which I love those. I can't honestly, I like growing up I was that kid that was always inside, and like I rarely went outside, and now I'm like I can't get enough of being out in the woods walking. And I love nature. I've fallen in love with it since the pandemic, and it's just more and more as I keep healing, and it's become a huge part of my journey. And that I do love. I also love the fact that I started doing the trauma informed yoga, which has been incredibly helpful for my nervous system and regulating. Dialoguing, that was something I discovered towards the end of 2022, but I've really taken it on this year. It's that journaling technique of writing with my dominant hand as my inner adult and my non-dominant hand as my inner child. And that's been a huge game changer for me in terms of processing things and really getting to the root of where it's taking me to, and how to show up from a more empowered and wiser place to reparent my inner child and support her as she's navigating some really tough stuff along with me. I would say that I have improved in some ways how I view myself and how I show up for myself and for others. However, I still have a long way to go in terms of having more compassion for myself and not pushing myself to be so stuck in that flight response, like just do, and like loading my agenda. And heck, I'm kind of doing it right now. Like, let's face it, I am recording the podcast on Christmas Day, like a bit of a flight response here, right? And yeah, that's why I want to take also the hiatus. Like, I want to take a break. It's kind of giving you a bit of a behind the scenes. It was really important for me to release the episode about the holidays and to do this reflection towards the end of the year. It was just something I really, really wanted to offer you. So I feel like a lot of content, rightfully so, they take breaks. Maybe I should be taking a break, but I thought like, this is a time where a lot of content takes a break, so people don't have something to listen to. So I thought I wanna have something out there that people can still have as they're navigating the holidays. And mission accomplished. The holiday episode came out. I'm recording this, but I also need a break, so I will take it. And I feel like I still struggle with not judging myself when I take a break, with not judging myself when I take things slow and when I just like sleep in or something like that. Like, I still struggle with that. And yeah, I gotta work on that. Another thing that I need to work on is accepting compliments. And I did this as recently as gosh, yesterday, hours ago, right? I still struggle when people compliment something in me or something about me. It's so hard to take it in, and I'm that person that instead of saying thank you or I appreciate you, which I'm working on saying, I'm still adding the minimization of it, or I frame it in a way where I actually am not giving myself any credit and I'm giving someone else credit for it, or I just don't own it. I don't own the compliment. It's hard to explain it, but best example I can give you is a friend of mine yesterday was basically letting me know how it's admirable that I'm doing all this healing, and even when like tough things are coming, I'm still getting something out of it because I'm so committed to this journey and this path and this growth. And I basically the way I approached it was, well, that's a trauma response too, and I wasn't trying to invalidate what she was saying. It was just I couldn't take the fucking compliment. And I did it subconsciously, and it took me till today. Today I was reflecting. I was like, oh my gosh, I did it again yesterday, and I approached her about it. And I was like, I can't believe I did this again. And I gotta work on that. And I do want to give myself credit for what I accomplished. Like that's a healthy thing. It stems from me not wanting things to get over my head, or I don't want to seem arrogant, or I don't want to. It's really weird. So I'm a singer. When the spotlight is on me and the microphone is in front of me, I can handle that part. But get me off the stage and I can't handle the spotlight anymore. It's really bizarre. And it probably sounds really, really odd, like for someone who's seen me performing and singing, and they're like, how are you not comfortable with the spotlight when that's what you do? But trust me, I am. Not lying here. One thing that I did in 2023 was I got the opportunity of going back to the studio. And it had been years since I had been to an actual studio. And definitely my first time in a studio in New York. I recorded backup vocals for my friend's latest studio album. His name is George Robb. And the latest album is called Terpsichore. And it was quite the privilege to get to be a part of that project. And yeah, that happened this year. It's wild that that happened earlier in the year, but the album came out not very long after I had recorded the vocals. And yeah, it's been out and about. And actually around the time when it's going to be hitting a year since I recorded in the studio this upcoming year, we are actually going to be performing the album live for a show. As I wrap up thinking about this year, and I'm sure I'm forgetting things that I will remember, and I can't talk about 2023 next year. This is not the only time I can talk about 2023, but as I wrap up this reflection, a few things that I have, and I want to call them goals. I'm not big on the resolutions framework. It doesn't quite work for me. If it does work for you, please like follow what is close to your heart, and if it's something that's beneficial, by all means. This is not, I'm not trying to shame anybody, but for me it's I've tried the resolutions in the past, and usually like they don't last very long. They're very short lived. So I'm trying to change the framework to arrive to something that works for me. And some goals that I have for this next year, and I really want to stick to this one. And I'm actually, the reason I'm going to say it here in the podcast is so I can hold myself accountable. Now you can hold me accountable, because I've said this a few times in the past and I don't do it. But this year I really want to release my own songs, my original songs. And technically in 2023, I did release music that I composed through this podcast, because the music that you hear doing the intro and the transitions and all that, that's actually a song that I composed it for the podcast, but as I was writing it, lyrics actually also came with it, and I'm working on that song, and I'm hoping to release it. I have a few more that I've been working on, and I'm gonna, just like I did this podcast as a DIY, I'm gonna do the same thing with an EP. That's the hope, and release that hopefully sooner than later. I am So the therapist that I have, she does EMDR. We've been working on like the whole purpose of therapy. Like we've been working towards getting to that, and it feels like it's getting closer and closer. And I'm pretty sure 2024 will be the year where I will finally start EMDR, and I hope it works for me. I've heard mixed things. Some people say, some people it works for them, some people it didn't work for them. I'm hoping it will work for me. I think it will. Usually I'm pretty susceptible to like getting something out of whatever I do in some way or another. So just based on that, I feel like something will come out of it. Whether or not it will be life changing, I don't know. I will definitely keep you posted because I do plan on sharing on this podcast how that goes for me and that process. But that's coming up. I am also hoping that this will work out for me. I've been looking for this one for a while now. I want to join an RRP therapy group, and RRP stands for Relationship Recovery Program. That's the type of modality that Patrick Dehan does, created by his mentor, Amanda Curtin, and they've been training people, so I've been on them like a hawk. And if all goes well and I can work it out, I'm really hoping that this next year I can start one of the groups and see how that goes for me. Another thing I want to do, I was doing this more before, and I kind of neglected this. Playing guitar and piano, I used to play a lot more, and now I feel like at this point, like both instruments have been collecting a lot of dust in my living room, and I do want to pick them up again because they are very, very therapeutic instruments for me, and I don't feel as much of an expert with instruments as I do with my vocal singing, but I feel like, yeah, I definitely wanna rekindle my relationship with those instruments in the next year. And gosh, I don't even have to wait for 2024. I can do it as soon as this weekend or tomorrow, right? But yeah, those are the intentions, and in this year I, more than goals, actually I want to call them intentions. That's a I think that's a word that feels a little bit more authentic and more, it just feels good when I just said it. I wanna set these intentions and start the new year with these things that I wanna have in my life. Yeah, well, we will see how that goes. It's really a thing of trial and error. At least that's how I experience it. Try something and it doesn't work out, and I'm like, okay, next year I'm not doing that. And some other things I definitely would love to see happen again in my life, and I will try to make that happen. And that's where I'm at. That's 2023 for me. I still have a few more days of the year to go. And I don't know what's coming in the next few days, but up to this point, I say 2023 has been quite the mixed bag. There's been a lot of pain and grief there, but there's also been some joyful, beautiful moments. And I hope in the next year I get to experience more beautiful moments. And I know there will be grief. And I hope that I am able to learn from that grief, and I'm able to get some new tools that can help me navigate that. Like if I had to summarize 2023, I would say I have lived it with a much better intention. I think I've shown up definitely more authentically this year than I have ever before. And I'm proud of the decisions that I've made for the most part. Not perfect, but I have been pretty committed to showing up in the best way that I could find at the time. And I think I can definitely say that I feel like a better person. At least I feel like I've been a better person this year. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to celebrate myself for that one. That's a big deal. That is a big deal. Yeah, I hope to keep showing up in the best way that I can next year. I hope to show up with empathy, with kindness, with respect for not only others but also for myself, because that's really the new thing. Like it's a lot easier to show up with those things for other people, but sometimes it feels impossible to do it for myself, and I really want to make that the default for me, to show up for myself with that same level of commitment to be kind and loving. So, yeah, 2023, thank you. Thank you for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And 2024, uh, please be kind. If I can wish for anything, please just be gentle, please. In this week's healing invitation, I want to invite you to reflect on how 2023 was for you. What worked? What did not? This invitation is to reflect on this year as you begin another. What things from 2023 would you like to see happen again? What would you rather not experience next year? And you can do this reflection in any way that serves you. It could be reflecting during a walk. It could be journaling about it, making a list. It could be doing a voice memo, perhaps a discussion with some of the people in your life that are doing this journey with you and having a conversation back and forth. I invite you to be intentional about thinking from the beginning of this year up to now. What has happened? How have you grown? What areas have you noticed that need to be worked on? I invite you to let that help you determine how you want to start showing up in 2024. Please let me know how this week's healing invitation goes if you choose to accept it. Before we wrap up this episode, all music and production is courtesy of yours truly. Also, I want to share a few ways you can help support this podcast. You can subscribe and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, or the platform you are using to listen. Share this episode with anyone you can think can benefit from this content. Follow Hello Trauma Brain on Instagram with the handle @HelloTraumaBrain. Subscribe to the Hello Trauma Brain YouTube channel and hit the notification bell to be the first to know when I post a new episode. And you can make a donation by getting me a coffee through the official bio site. No worries, all links will be provided in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this episode was helpful. I wish you the best as you finish the year 2023 and begin 2024. May this new year bring you healing, peace, and joy. I will be talking to you in January of 2024. Once more, I will be taking a very brief hiatus, and I will announce on Instagram when the podcast will come back, definitely by the end of January. And I cannot wait to talk to you then. In the meantime, please take good care of yourselves. And I invite you to re-listen to any of the episodes or catch up on any episodes you didn't get a chance to listen to yet. And I will be talking to you next year. It is time for our farewell affirmations. You are welcome to repeat after me. I am enough. I am lovable. And I deserve to heal. I wish you a gentle week, and thank you for listening.